What? Gosh, Cat, come on. Trying to make a video. I got cat butt on the book. What can you do? Okay, we are back. John Delarose here, the leading Hispanic voice in science fiction, coming at you with another epic collection review. And a cat. Oh yeah, that's comfortable. Right on the book. I can't do nothing about it. Anyway, this is Black Widow Volume 1. Get off the book. All right. And just came out a couple weeks ago, and I was very interested in this because the movie's coming out. It's from 1964 to 1971, a big span because she really didn't have her own series at that point. She appeared in Iron Man as a villain, then Avengers for a bit, as you can see. Got kind of a lead-in issue for Amazing Spider-Man. Then she got her own, like, half of a book in Amazing Adventures 1 through 8, where it was split with the Inhumans. Yes, I know you want pets. Yes, I know you want pets. Okay. And then a Daredevil issue. So this is an interesting epic collection, and I gotta say right away that if you're buying all of the epic collections and getting all the Iron Man stuff and Avengers stuff, I mean, other than that Amazing Adventures bit, you really don't need this book at all. So I recently read Iron Man Volume 1, and Iron Man Volume 1 contains all of these Tales of Suspense issues in it, where you've got Iron Man fighting the Crimson Dynamo, and Black Widow is kind of trying to infiltrate into Iron Man's deal. Eventually Hawkeye shows up as a bad guy and then falls in love with Black Widow, and she manipulates him, and they do their thing with Iron Man here. Very simple plots. And it's kind of towards the end of this Iron Man stuff. They show they're not all that bad. Like, Hawkeye's, like, really not wanting to do anything wrong. There's Black Widow, really. Nor's my cat. But at the same time, they are, you know, they are who they are. All right, so we get into Avengers. Now, where this book, I have not read the Avengers stuff yet. I kind of skimmed over this material. And the reason I skimmed over it is because I intend on reading the Avengers, like, as a, you know, as a whole plot. I wanted to see what happened to Black Widow, and you can kind of just, like, look at the Black Widow pages, and Hawkeye, you know, they're part of the team, but people don't trust them because they're not sure they were bad guys. And what kind of is lame about this volume is that, other than a couple issues, most of the Black Widow stuff is actually, they just cut out like 2 or 3 pages because she's only, you know, in those 2 or 3 pages, because that's how team books work when they're trying to do stuff. And the rest, and then, you know, you just don't get the full story, really. So I read a couple of those 2 or 3 page deals. It's always Black Widow, you know, trying to, like, come to terms with things. It gets really interesting when she joins S.H.I.E.L.D. and is working for them. I really found that a great development of the character, and, you know, that fits kind of with the movie verse and all that. And then eventually they get captured, and she deals with this Red Guardian, who apparently is her husband from back home, which nobody knew about before. And she has a, you know, Spider-Man Gwen Stacy moment where, you know, spoilers, spoiling 1960s books, where he dies and she blames herself for it, and, you know, kind of quits the Avengers and all that because she can't handle it, says goodbye to Hawkeye, and Hawkeye's really upset. Like a death ray from the sky. Yeah. And that's what goes on in this part. So that's it. Not all that exciting. I mean, it is, but I mean, it's all really good stuff in the Avengers. But again, just because they have pieces of issues and all that, you know, unless you're, like, really just, like, going for the Black Widow for the movie and you really, really wanted to know what the Black Widow's about, you know, you can almost skip through all of that. I'd read a couple of the Tales of Suspense ones up front. I'd read them in Iron Man first, to be honest. Then I'd go read the Avengers books when you're going to read them. Now, what's interesting is Amazing Spider-Man 86 is the next issue, and the last epic collection, which I just reviewed for you guys, ends at 85. So I was actually very excited to read this because it's literally the next issue from what I was reading last week. And here's the other cool part about this. So Black Widow gets her costume and kind of is who she is at this point. But she gives a whole synopsis of what happens in all those Avengers books for 3 pages. So you actually don't need to read any of that. If you get the synopsis here, it works out just well enough. And then she redesigns her costume in this series. And this is obviously meant as a lead-in and promo for the Amazing Adventures stuff. So she ends up getting in a fight with Spider-Man to try to prove herself that she's just as capable as the Spider-Man because she's Black Widow. Get it? Spider-Man, Black Widow. And that's how that ties in, I guess. And then they kind of give a promo saying that she's going to star in her own book. They actually changed the title of the book. It was going to be Amazing Tales when this came out. And they changed it to Amazing Adventures. So Amazing Adventures hits. This is what I was interested in reading for the most part because it hasn't really been reprinted. I don't know if it has been reprinted. I've never seen it before. Drawn by John Buscema, at least the first issue. Gary Friedrich is the writer for the first 4. Now, they really had trouble getting people to work on this because the creative team changes almost every issue, and it causes problems. But these are 10-page short stories. At first, they're establishing Black Widow and this guy Ivan, who's her driver. He's another, defecting Russian. And she fights in the streets, and she becomes, instead of being a secret agent like she was for S.H.I.E.L.D., she's really, just a boring street-level character with, and they mention her social life, that she's, a socialite with a lot of good social ties, and she's got a lot of money. She's got a penthouse. So she's one of those generic, I'd say DC characters of the age where she's wealthy, she's popular in her regular life, so and then she goes and does this vigilante stuff on the side on the street level, which is not as fun as all that S.H.I.E.L.D. espionage stuff of her origins, unfortunately. And because the creative team's changing so much, you get very inconsistent art all the way around. The first couple issues you get Buscema, obviously. But in this storyline, there's this street gang, and they are holding themselves up in an apartment to try to they want to help the poor out of this building or whatever, but it's not their building, and so Black Widow has to fight and try to stop them from doing illegal things. She gets caught up and called part of them anyway. J. Jonah Jameson, they're trying to tie in the Spider-Man bit again. By issue 3, and Gene Colan takes over for art here, which I didn't like nearly as much as Buscema's once it came out. The writing's gets a little weird. Not yet. Actually, it's later on. I'll let you know when that happens. But basically, there's this masked figure, and he captures Black Widow while this is going on. It's supposed to deal with 70s riots and things like that, I guess. Race relations. I don't know. It was very unclear and murky. The kids are trying to do the right thing. Black Widow is helping them. And then they really wrap it up really quickly, where she is going to go in and just talk to them. They don't even show her talking to them on screen. She comes out and says, everything's resolved. I've got the money, and I'm going to just buy them a lease for a building. And everything's fine now, mayor and police chief. And they all shake hands, and they're all happy together. Why didn't she just do that from the start instead of letting them go and do this and then well, I don't know. Doesn't make any sense. The whole issue didn't need to happen because they actually approached her first before doing this. It's silly. So starts off on a bad foot, and then Roy Thomas takes over writing. And there's this new plot where there's this homeless guy. He's gonna jump off a bridge or something like that, and he's got this astrologer guy who's trying to stop him, and Black Widow for some reason finds him and brings him to her apartment and saves him. And it turns out that she is led to this astrologer cult guy who's trying to cause trouble for everybody. Now there's problems in this, and she ends up losing the guy who she saved to begin with. It was very odd. And then she goes on a mission to kind of stop these astrologer people, and she gets worried because everybody around her is dying. Is it just a curse? Is she not really doing things right? Got Gary Conway now scripting it a couple issues later. It seemed like nobody wanted to work on this, and nobody's really passionate about what was going on here, as they keep changing creative teams. Now Don Heck's doing the art, right? We're just 2 issues into things changing again from Gene Colan. And there's actually, even panel by panel, it's like they skip over elements sometimes, and it just doesn't flow very well as a series. And the other thing to note of this series is they take every chance they get to put Black Widow in underwear or nightgowns, or there's one of her in the shower. Obviously trying to be like, please read this book for any reason. I guess it didn't work, even though that's a nice piece of art right there. So eventually she goes and hunts down the bad guys, of course, and that actually ended. They ended that in 3 issues. So that issue ended that whole deal. She fought down that astrologer. There's a part where she says he, calls him white hair. I don't know where the panel is, but then he's got blonde hair in the actual panel. There's another panel where she's talking to the astrologer, but she's fighting with this guy, and the astrologer is actually not in the scene until later. Like I said, very funky. And apparently it takes place on docks, and if you look at it closely, there's kind of a dock right there, and they mention it in the dialogue. But other than that, like, you can't really tell they're on docks anywhere in this entire fight scene. It's just like very rushed art with no backgrounds, very hard to follow, and that's indicative of this entire series. It feels like an aborted attempt. And I do think they screwed it up, because they should have made this an espionage book and made her working for S.H.I.E.L.D. or working for some private contractor in espionage or something like that, or even having to deal with Russians, and it would have been cool. And it just ended up not cool. So, yeah, this last issue is a standalone, and she's fighting some other group of bad guys under this bad guy. I guess he's called the Watchlord. And just a one-off that's really has very little bearing. And they end it right here. And then she gets really upset because, like, the bad guy died. And she's like, is it just because Black Widow just makes everybody die? And that's it. That's all of her adventures right there. So that's all you get of, like, the actual Black Widow starring in her own adventures rather than guest starring. We get a Daredevil issue, which is this is in Daredevil Volume 4, so you don't really need this book for anything other than those amazing adventures. And the Spider-Man, because that'll be in Volume 6 whenever that comes out. And Black Widow rescues Daredevil at one point in this book, saves him, and that's her whole role in this. And so there really isn't a ton of development of Black Widow in this, as there's just, a little bit of her guest starring again, and then you get a pin-up of her at the end of that book. So very disappointing book overall. I guess it shows her early adventures, and these are her early adventures. It's not like they had better early adventures to choose from in this whole ordeal. So, I mean, it's not their fault for what the content is, but it's not that exciting of stuff. So, all the way around, like, the Tales of Suspense issues are good, but again, I just buy Iron Man for that. The Avengers stuff's interesting, but out of the context of the Avengers story, like, a lot of those pages just don't flow very well. Just to show a couple of scenes from Black Widow. The Spider-Man issue is nice if you want to just get a jump start on your reading until the next one comes out. And Amazing Adventures was just really inconsistent and not great. And then Daredevil, really didn't add much to the character. So that's it. That's Black Widow Volume 1. Now, interestingly enough, Volume 2 doesn't pick up again until the 80s, where she stars in Marvel graphic novels. And she's got her own miniseries and things like that coming out of those. So Volume 2 should be a lot better, and I think they had a better idea of what they wanted to do with the character at that point. I don't know. I haven't read those books yet. But I look forward to Volume 2. I think it's going to be way more interesting, probably more useful for somebody who's actually interested in what the Black Widow is going to be like in the movies and all that. This is really only great if you haven't read her origin in Iron Man and you really want to read her origin. But she changes so much as a character, and they really retcon and change so much about her that later on that it's not crucial material. And I don't think the Amazing Adventure stuff really impacts anything about the character going on, because it was such an aborted concept there. Amazing Adventures did continue on, and she did not star in it, but they had a Beast storyline that started in issue number 11, which is in X-Men Volume 4. And that Beast storyline is excellent and really develops that character in contrast to this. It's a one of the better stories I've read, and totally worth reading. So it's not like those other Marvel volumes, like where they were like sharing leads were necessarily bad. It's just this story happened to be bad. Yeah, so this is, for me, I'd say a 5 out of 10 as a volume. You know, I generally give the benefit of the doubt and say 7 out of a 10 as an average. So it's pretty low. I mean, it's not like Daredevil Fall from Grace bad or anything like that, but it is skippable material that's really not that good. All right, hit that like and subscribe button and leave a comment down below what you think, and talk about the Black Widow movie, anything you want. I'd be interested in hearing your thoughts. Talk about my cat. My cat wants to know. Kit Kit. Kit Kit. Kit Kit. There she goes. All right, see you.